Hey, brothers, sisters. While I was studying yesterday, the Lord gave me an insight on a passage of Scripture. And I was going to do a short on it. But I felt that the insight merited a more of an unpacking. And that's what this is. And the insight comes from Galatians chapter 6, verse 1. Now I'm reading out of the New Living Translation. It says, "Dear brothers and sisters, if any believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back into the right path. And be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself." Now I want to read that same passage out of Galatians, out of the English Standard Version. It says, "Brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you too be tempted." Now, when Paul warns in Galatians 6:1 to be careful that you don't fall into the same temptation, many of us immediately assume that he means falling into the exact same vice. Like if you're helping someone overcome anger or an addiction, it's in a sense like saying, be careful that you don't catch the same bug. Okay, that's how we always interpret that passage. Now, while that is a practical hazard that could happen, that is not what Paul is addressing here. When we read this verse in context, Galatians shows that Paul is primarily warning against the temptation of spiritual pride and arrogance and self-righteousness. Now, here is where, here are some of the reasons that I believe that that's what Paul is addressing here. And this is what the Lord showed me. First, obviously, it's the immediate context, the verses that follow, right? When you look at this writing and read after verse 1, he's directly addressing the attitude of the person doing the restoration. He says in verse 2 and 3, share each other's burdens, and in this way obey the law of Christ. If you think you are too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourselves. You are not that important. Here we see Paul anticipating the trap of pride and ego. Think about it like this. If you've been in ministry for any amount of time and have helped restore people, the moment we step into that restoring someone, action, the ego loves to whisper, look how spiritually mature you are compared to this guy, right? That's always there's always a spiritual pride. Oh, you always look at yourself and look at this person, man, I've got it all together. What Paul is doing, he is brutally checking the ego by reminding us that thinking that we are superior is a form of self-delusion. You're not that important. The second reason why I think this applies to the spiritual pride is the trap of self-righteousness. By the way, this is the temptation. Self-righteousness is the temptation or the sin of the Pharisees, or the sin of the older brother in the parable of the prodigal son. It starts off as the subtle godly grief and compassion for the fallen brother, to the competitive of how good I am compared to you. It's you look at your brother and you go, look at that mess he's got going on. Look at all his out of control life. Oh, look at me. Look at my life is together. God really must, he's really close to me. That's why he's giving me this insight that I can encourage this brother. And then subtly, this is all subtle, you start to conclude that you're at a higher tier than the person that you're helping, than your brothers. You're like, I'm this great believer. And the moment we feel superior, you are actually falling into a temptation that in many ways is much more insidious than the overt sin that you're trying to help your brother and sister overcome. It's a subtle thing, folks. And if you've been in ministry long enough, you know this to be true. It's a confirmation in your spirit. That's when the Lord showed me this. I knew it was right. I knew it was right on the money. And here's the third reason. The remedy he gives. A spirit of gentleness. Now this is the one that really opened it up for me. That really drove it home. Because I see a lot of correction online. And it burdens me. It really burdens me because the correction comes with this self-righteousness and judgmental and a superior posture. It's something that if you're attuned enough, you pick up immediately. You just pick up immediately. Again, to go back to the third point, it's the remedy, a spirit of gentleness. This is why Paul specifies that that restoration must be done in a spirit of gentleness or humility. Now listen to this, folks. True gentleness and humility only can exist when you realize the depths of your own ruin. Let me say that again. True gentleness or humility can only exist when you have realized the depths of your own ruin. And then when then you could realize that you are no different than your brothers and sisters. That's where the spirit of gentleness comes. You know, I made a short once. I recorded a short once that I said I'm hesitant when I have to bring judgment. I said that I'm hesitant, that I don't immediately want to judge, or I'm just hesitant when I bring judgment. And I had comments on my video about, you know, of course, everybody, quoting scriptures about we have to judge and we have to hold accountability and all this stuff. I understand all that. But the one thing that I picked up in my spirit is that we immediately want to justify judgment. But I've realized that I know that I have to judge, but I know my own ruin. I know what I am. I know how I struggle. So I'm cautious. And this is what Paul is addressing here. This is what Paul is trying to warn us of, that pride that comes from wanting to correct your brother or restore. This is what Paul is addressing here. So let me summarize it. Paul's warning here is a guardrail against the occupational hazard of ministry and accountability, and that is pride, spiritual self-righteousness. He is telling us that while we are pulling our brothers out of the ditch, we have to watch our own footing so that we don't trip over our own arrogance and fall into the exact same ditch of self-righteousness. Think about that.